Okay, so today I'm going to share with you 3 drills or exercises that have helped my students turn the driver from a club they didn't have a lot of confidence in to possibly the best club in the bag, hitting it longer and straighter. And these 3 drills are going to be ones that you've probably not seen that much before. They're going to be new ones that I think are really going to help you make this golf club work a lot better for you. So let's start off with the first one. I'm going to tee a ball up, although we're not going to hit that one to begin with. So the first little exercise is what I like to call energize the swing early. So I'm going to take an alignment stick, I'm going to pop it into the ground and angle like this. Now I'm going to take my kind of setup that I would as best I can for a driver, and I'm going to try and hold this stick like I would if it was a golf club. And what I'm going to do, clearly that stick is kind of pushed into the ground with a fair bit of force. So if I'm going to make a backswing or kind of simulate a backswing, I need to remove that stick from the ground. 2 ways I can do that. I could just give it a pull with my arms. We don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want to feel like I keep my arm structure pretty much as it is, but feel like I use my body to push up and around, which will remove the stick from the ground. So if I do that now, I'm going to just make a backswing. That's the exercise. Simple as that. And I mean, I can tell you, what it's going to be doing for you, but what I'd actually rather have happen is that you do this little exercise, you find a space where you can do this, and then you start to create your own ideas on what are you actually doing to achieve that. Ultimately, what we're really trying to do is to say, well, look at the great drivers of the golf ball, and I use Rory as an example, Rory McIlroy, because he is kind of widely known as one of the best drivers of the golf ball on the planet. He does this exceptionally well. You watch him from face on, he is not moving that golf club with his arms. He is actually shifting, he's pushing, he's rotating, and it's his body which is initiating that movement. And because obviously his arms and the club are connected, the club is moving. So we're going to take a setup and we're going to feel like using our body rotation, we're going to push onto the ground and we're going to make our backswing. For me, with the drive, well, with any club for that matter, some of the worst advice we can give a golfer with the driver is low and slow. Because it's just not what we see. We don't see the great players. Next time you watch some golf, look at Bryson, look at Rory. Are they going low and slow? Not really. There's a bit of force there, there's a bit of aggression because they're having to energize their swing early. So when we take our address to this golf ball, certainly one of the biggest faults that I see amongst amateurs with the driver is a focus on the club head and a movement of the club head with just the arms alone. Look what's happened to my arm structure. My trail arm has bent a lot. My hands have got a lot closer to my chest. So what I've done is I've lost all that width I established at address. I've become very narrow. I haven't engaged my body. And at this point here in my golf swing, there's no energy in there. It's not energized. It's not ready to hit a golf ball. Whereas if we can start our golf swing with this kind of body movement and this pushing up and away from the ground, feeling like we're removing that stick, at that same point in the golf swing, we've got much more width. The club head is away from me, my hands are away from me. I've started to engage my body. I've started to shift some pressure, which we know is what the best golfers in the world do. So that little exercise at the start is going to give you a great idea on how to actually start your swing with the driver. Low and slow, for me, doesn't work. So try that little exercise, energize your swing early. It's going to give you some different feels, I think, from what you currently have. Okay, point number 2, we have again got our alignment stick. It's getting a lot of use in this video. And this is a movement I like to call save some turn for later. What does that mean? Well, let's quickly look at what might happen in your golf swing. And I say your golf swing because this is quite common. A golfer can sort of get somewhere near the top of the golf swing, but kind of before they complete their backswing, the right side, maybe it's the hip, it's the knee, or even the hips just kind of shoot in towards the golf ball and we start to get this over the top or this steepening move. What I'd love you to try and do is feel like in transition, so as the club is moving from backswing to downswing, you're actually adding some hip turn. And so I've got this alignment stick here because it's going to help us kind of visualize that. So when we look from that down the line view, we can obviously see how much I'm turning my hips. So if I was to do this in kind of slow motion, the movement that I'd love you to try and work towards would be one where you make your backswing, and then as you get towards the completion of your backswing, you add some turn. Now you'll hopefully notice that had an effect on the club head and the club shaft. It wasn't just my hips that moved. What it actually was likely to do is it's actually likely to get you a little bit deeper. It's actually likely to get the club a little bit more across the line. But because it's in our transition, it's really helping with how we move, obviously, from backswing to downswing. So many of you, if you're struggling with this driver, it's because that transition is not good. It's because it's too quick, or because it's possibly that you're moving the club in an incorrect direction as you start down, and then once you've started that way, incredibly hard to fix it. So I'd love you to do this. Pop an alignment stick through your belt loops, set up, just inside a ball, and just have some swings where in transition, you feel like you're adding some turn. And I'd almost guarantee that what you're going to feel is that you're going to feel like you've got a lot more room on the way down, and you're probably going to feel like you can actually hit the golf ball a little bit more from the inside. And in my experience coaching, that's one of the biggest things that we can give a golfer. The ability to feel this kind of inside delivery with space. Because so many golfers are coming over the top, chopping down, it then feels really cramped. And when we're trying to swing a golf club like the driver as fast as we can, we need space, we need room. Being cramped is really difficult. So we go up, we save some of our hip turn for later, and we use it in our transition. Now, if I was going to use an example for this, who would I use? Yep, you guessed it, Rory. You look at Rory, again, probably the best person demonstrating this. He's got a fantastic sort of hip rotation, squatting move in transition, really helps him. So, save some turn for later. Really going to help with that transition, give you a little bit more space on the way down. Point number 3, with the driver, this one has helped add some serious distance to a lot of my students over the last few years. Don't be afraid to jump. That's what I'll tell all my students. We'll look at the belt line and what the belt line is doing. And what we see with great drivers of the golf ball, and we've obviously already made some changes to that transition, but as the golf club is being delivered to the golf ball, i.e. that impact area, the belt line will be going up. It's rising. The belt is moving away from the ground. It doesn't mean my head is moving away from the ground, because I'm not getting taller. And if you look at what my belt is doing here, my belt can get taller without my head getting further away from the ground. What is effectively happening is the golfers who demonstrate that are pushing. They're pushing from the ground. We spoke in that first section how that takeaway was going to get some pressure into a trail side early. That transition that we've looked at will get more pressure into your lead side early. Great. What do we do with that? Well, we use that to create rotational speed and vertical force. Most people over the last 15, 20 years have been told to rotate your hips quickly with a driver. Yeah, that's going to help. What we haven't been told so much is that as we're rotating, we should be jumping. We should be pushing up and away from the ground. That's what helps us get into these really nice, tall, extended positions where we're, with any luck, watching our ball fly down the middle of the fairway, probably 20 yards longer than before. So don't be afraid to push off the ground. Don't be afraid to jump. It's something that I will tell so many of my students to do with the drive, because the last thing we want is staying down on the golf ball. This is really not great for power. It doesn't really give us a lot of energy in that right part of the swing, and it really doesn't give us the room that we need target side. So very difficult to work on this, because if you made a swing at 20% speed, you're not going to need that jump as much. So what I would really have you do is hit shots and just feel like through impact you're pushing away from the ground and feeling like you're raising the belt line away from the ground. So let's go ahead and see if I can do that. I'm just going to go ahead and just push off the ground. If I do this correctly, you might even see the lead foot move a little bit as I do it.